Hey, what's up guys? So today we're going to be doing a new build of Necromancer because of the PTR on Season 22. We now have access to a new item called the Gelmandor's Morrow Guards. What this does is increase the damage of our Bone Spears from our simulacrums. Now, I wanted to make a completely different build for this as there are newer things to go ahead and play around with now that you're going to be able to deal a massive amount of damage. As long as you're able to kill the targets, you can actually not run a resource generator. If you guys have played Bone Spear before, a lot of times what you would have to do is you would go ahead and use Bone Spear, you'd run out of your resource, and then you would have to group Scythe, generate resource, and then go ahead and Bone Spear again. This build, and what makes this different than the previous ones, is that it does not have to do this as you're able to hit hard enough and regain resource by consuming the corpses. So this is going to be something a little bit different here as it is just the PTR. I'm still doing okay with this build. You'll see what we placed over on the leaderboard in a moment with this newer build using ice. You could take the previous builds though, and you could literally slap this on the bracer department and you'll do a much more amount of damage. So if you guys wanted the previous build, that's all you really need to do to change your build. However, I want to show you guys a newer build for Season 22. Keep in mind, because it is the PTR, everything could be subject to change. Just want to go ahead and mention, if you do, go ahead and click the D3 Planner link because it's only available on the PTR. I just have a rare set of bracers here just as a placeholder for this item, as again, this is something that is newer, that is not on the live version of the game yet. Also wanted to additionally mention that there is no 4th Kanai's Cube right now for Season 22's PTR. That will be added later in the week. But yeah, this is a newer build that just makes the Bone Spear build just so much more enjoyable to play. It feels a lot smoother. This is a gameplay that you guys are going to be seeing in the background with no augments and a relatively low paragon. But anyways, let's go ahead and hop right into the build, and the D3 planner will be linked down below just in case any of you guys want to read every single piece of stat on the gear. But it's pretty much the same that you would have previously in the build, which is basically in every build of Diablo, which is crit hit chance, crit hit damage, the multiplier on the ability that you're using. In our case, it's going to be Bone Spear, and then area damage on certain pieces of gear where you can go ahead and get it. So you guys are seeing cold damage gameplay in the background, which actually gives us more attack speed, because if we're able to kill things fast enough, I'm just going to go ahead and get more attack speed, especially when you go ahead and fight the Rift Guardian. The ice will be a little bit better because you're able to deal out that damage faster, while the poison has to go ahead and pierce targets. That's the main difference between ice and poison. But poison was the more meta of builds, because if you happen to get a bunch of enemies stacked up, you can go ahead and throw a Bone Spear and it will just melt things. But because you happen to deal more damage with, of course, your simulacrums, your attack speed actually matters because it's going to go ahead and have your simulacrums also attack faster by 2. So you get a huge benefit by attacking faster. But overall, it depends on kind of the density, which one is going to be better for the circumstances. But generally with bosses, the ice would technically outplay it. But anyways, yeah, I'll mouse over the pieces of gear. Again, nothing too specific that it would be something that I need to mention in terms of the pieces of gear. But what is nice is with the Crispin Sentence, we get more damage when an enemy is going to be slowed or any impaired effect, really. And we also happen to have the Bane of the Trap, so that's going to go ahead and do more damage if the enemy is under, again, control impairing effect, which is any cold damage. And then on top of that, we also have Lost Time. This is something that is going to be different than the Poison because it's going to reduce the movement speed of enemies by 30%. And then also your movement speed is increased, so it technically gives us a little bit more speed as well with the build. And then I actually opted for Captain Crimson. So what this allows us to do is actually output even more damage with the build, and on top of that get some extra damage reduction because of the 3-piece bonus, and it already gives us extra cooldown and extra resource cost reduction, which is quite nice. And then it's just Scythe of the Cycle. There's no difference with the weapon here. But in terms of the gems, it's pretty much the same that everyone's running. The Zaystone of Vengeance, the Bane of the Stricken, as well as Bane of the Trapped over here. Now the skills are going to be a little bit different over here. So we are running Bone Armor. You can run the Poison Rune if you want to go ahead and stun, which can actually increase your damage a lot. But because you happen to have the Lost Time, and then on top of that you have Zaystone to go ahead and stun the enemy, and on top of that with your Bone Prison, you have a lot of abilities to go ahead and instantly get that max benefit of Crispin Sentence. But again, you can run Poison if you want to. It's not that big of a difference here. And then we are running the Cold Rune on Bone Spear, which gives us extra attack speed and also their attack speed is reduced. I'm not sure if this is actually going to be proccing Crispin's again, but hey, it's just more there if that happens to proc, but it's just more attack speed is what it comes down to. The poison one is more pierce. If you pierce, it'll go ahead and do increased damage for every enemy that it pierces. Again, I tried both of them. They're both very viable. You can do either one of these and still play the same build. The whole point of this is, again, to not have to use a resource generator, the Scythe, the Grim Scythe. And then also you can skip out on Dainty's Binding because you're not using it anyways. So with Land of the Damned Frozen Lands, this is just specifically against the Rift Guardian. You might run into a situation because there's not enough corpses. You can spawn in the Rift Guardian as long as there's enough corpses, you can go ahead and still be able to eliminate them perfectly fine. But if there are no corpses, or if you want to go even higher for the Greater Rift pushings, the Rift Guardian just has a lot of health, so sometimes you'll have to activate this. This is the only thing that will require you to use Land of the Dead. Everything else, you should be basically doing enough damage to eliminate them. If you're not, then probably just go ahead and lower the Rift. But that would be the difference between this build and, let's say, another build that is interested in pushing and not eliminating all the enemies fast enough. But because you're able to do it fast enough, I think that depending on where the next cube testing goes, we'll have to wait and see if this is going to be better than what is already going to be considered the meta, which is, again, the poison build right now, as we're kind of just testing things out. Next up, I'm running Devour over here with Devouring Aura, so I don't even have to manage this, which is really nice. It just lets me go ahead and consume the corpses. It's kind of more of like an auto-ish build, which I like, versus having to numlock activate it, especially on some of you guys that might be playing on console, as numlocking is obviously not available on console. And then Simulacrum, it doesn't matter the rune over here because you get all of them anyways. And then running Blood Rush Potency for extra survivability over here. So yeah, we took a 70 on the PTR. With this build. Again, this is no augment, so I think it can push way, way, way higher, and the gem levels, you can see, aren't even that high over here, as we're just messing around, just testing some things out. And then Bone Prism, no difference here. Serration, no difference here. This is in like most builds, which is standalone. And then I'm also running Dark Reaping. This is going to go ahead and just give us extra resource over here. So now that we've completed a higher Greater Rift, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys gameplay of what would be a T16, as this is supposed to be a speed build. You can go ahead and actually run the Metabolism rune, and then I swap standalone for Fueled by Death, which gives us extra speed. So you can see this build can get even faster. Obviously, if you want to go faster, you're probably not trying to push the Greater Rifts. But in terms of the cube items, we're going to go ahead and use the Petrified Spike, which is in every build anyways. And then we have the Requiem Seraplate. This allows us to go ahead and maintain the ability to, again, I don't want to go ahead and use Grim Scythe. That was the whole point of this build. And this way I don't have to use this. It just gives us a bunch of extra essence, which is awesome, and also extra life here. And then I'm running Unity over here. Normally you'd run like Convention of Elements, but the thing is that since you don't have Dainty's Binding and you're not going to be cursing the enemies, you're going to be obviously taking more damage. So to mitigate that, we run Unity instead. And technically with this, you get a decent amount of damage. Anyways, you can get anywhere from 40 to 60% extra damage with, of course, that cooldown reduction. And on top of that, you also have that extra damage reduction with Course Captain's set, and we are running the Royal Ring of Grandeur. But in terms of what I would recommend is the Shadow Hook, which I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys what the heck that looks like. And what it does is it gives you, for every point, oh gosh, it kind of moved over to the side. Here we go. So for every point of maximum essence, it increases your damage by 0.5 and your bone spikes generate more essence, but that doesn't really matter. All it really comes down to is you're dealing upwards of 150% bonus damage with this newer cube slot, which again, that's going to be coming out next week. And when that does come out, guys, I'll cover it. And I think this build can actually be a lot better. Obviously with that, as long as we're able to kill enemies at a reasonable pace. I might go back to poison, but the point was to show you guys a completely different build. The whole difference between poison, again, is if there is enough density, you do enough damage for it to actually matter. And it just does more damage when it's basically going through a lot of targets. I was also thinking about using it as of Johan, as that stacks everything up really nice, but to lose out on like 150% damage, I'm pretty sure Shadow Hook will be the go-to. You can also consider Convention of Elements as an alternative if you have the survivability. You can also, instead of running the topazes, you can run rubies as well as emeralds to get more survivability, so the build will be a little bit more tanky, and that way you can output more DPS. You can go ahead and still have the shadow hook and then not run unity and then run convention of elements, and then you're looking at a lot more DPS. But again, that would be a little bit risky because we don't have Dainty's Binding for this version of the build. But we'll do some more testing, as again, the whole point of this was to not have to use that resource generator. But anyways, that's pretty much it for the build and video. If you guys have any suggestions for it to kind of make it a little bit more different, as I wanted this to be a newer build of the Bone Spear, basically dropping the generator because we're able to do enough damage to go ahead and consume those corpses. But anyways, I'll update you guys later down the line with how this build goes, as I'll eventually put augments in and we'll try to push, but I want to do it on this season with the new bonus where when we get those pylons, we're going to be getting those new clones, and on top of that, we get that extra cube slot, so that can actually change up things quite a bit. But anyways, thanks for tuning in, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like on it, and if you're new here, would like to see more Diablo content for Season 22, subscribe, turn on that bell, and you'll see more very soon. But take care, guys, and I'll catch you in the next video. And I'm out. Peace.